If you're an entrepreneur, you know what it means to take personal and financial risks, create jobs that support your community, and devote most of your time to your business. But do you know how to plan for a successful exit from your business? Do you know who should be involved in creating your succession or transition plan and the steps along the way? Welcome to Finish Big, the podcast with Mark Dorman from Legacy Business Advisors. The podcast theme is inspired by critically acclaimed business author Bo Burlingham, author of Finish Big, How Great Entrepreneurs Exit Their Companies on Top. In this podcast, you'll hear success stories of exit plans done right and pick up practical tips based on years of Legacy Business Advisors' expertise and knowledge about the largest and most important financial transaction of your life. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to the Finish Big podcast with your host, Mark Dorman. Today, we're talking about the process at Legacy Business Advisors. I'm Wendy McConnell. Hello there, Mark, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Wendy. How are you?
Oh, just great. Now, today, we wanted to talk a little bit about the history of Legacy Business Advisors.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's great to be with you. Legacy Business Advisors was founded about 15 years ago. It really as a subset of my primary practice or profession, which was financial consulting to business owners. And I stumbled along this exit planning space, so to speak. And I think I shared with the story with you before, but I was actually walking through the Midway airport. And I just sold a big part of my business to my former partner and was looking kind of for the next chapter of my life. And as I was walking through Midway, I saw one of those 6-foot banners and it said, Finish Big, with the cover of Bo's book, How Great Entrepreneurs Exit Their Business on Top. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was really almost like an epiphany. And I said to myself, wow, immediately boarded the plane, and before I'd gotten in a taxi, I'd stopped at the bookstore, and they had a stand, and I picked up the book, and I began reading it that night. And that's where I was first introduced to not only Bo Burlingham, but the whole exit planning conundrum, if you will. From there, I just did a ton of research, began traveling throughout the Midwest to see different speakers, enrolled in many, many professional certification classes. And I knew I had the client base that really had a need for this discussion. And that really is the discussion of how to transition and how to successfully transition out of one's business, land on their feet, financially secure on the other side. So the process in our firm was really launched at that particular time. And I would tell, to be honest with you, it's kind of evolved. It has specifically, started out with maybe 2 or 3 parts, but as I completed engagement after engagement, I saw similar elements in every business, which I'll share with you here in this morning's show, whereby that it just kind of evolved and got a lot broader and deeper. And that really became the genesis of not only Legacy Business Advisors, but our process as a whole.
What's striking to me is, one, that billboard/advertisement really worked.
Yeah.
For one. For two, it changed your whole outlook on what you were going to do moving forward. Absolutely.
And it created a really terrific friend in Bo, because I'm just that kind of strange individual. I'm like, who's this Bo Burlingham? And, as I'm getting on the taxi into downtown Chicago, I'm Googling him, and I see all these books that he's read, and I immediately read all those. And then I pinged him at boburlingham.com and found out that he was going to be back in Chicago. And I went back about 4 months later, saw him present at a seminar, had arranged to have a coffee with him. And, kind of, I wouldn't say the rest is history, so to speak, but we just engaged in a really nice relationship. I subsequently brought him to both Cleveland and Akron to speak to a group of my clients and a group of bank clients that we had sponsored a program with. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. And I shared my process and my business model with him. And he said to me, hey, you got something here. And, keep at it, because the demand is huge in this marketplace.
So it's also a lesson in, just reach out, just ask the question, just try, because you never know what's going to happen. But you do know that if you don't ever reach out or try, nothing will happen.
Yeah. I mean, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call because someone might answer it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great.
Let's talk about your team. Who is on the LBA team?
Yeah, so the LBA team is comprised of 8 individuals. Dave Kacharski, who's our director of financial planning. And you say, well, why would you have financial planning in a succession planning or exit planning practice? Well, a big component of exit planning or succession planning is financial preparedness for the owner and assessing their level of one's preparedness and arranging their personal financial plan, transition plan, to play in concert with the succession plan. So he's one of our key members. Another key member would be Nikki Cook. Nikki is a 25-year veteran in the retirement plan space. Again, retirement planning becomes a huge component of exit planning. And then one of our most recent additions is Chris Goebel. Chris and his family ran an organization called Great Lakes Trailways, a big charter bus company, and did about $40 million in revenue and successfully exited, sold that business to private equity. Chris stayed on to run that company and was with Coach USA and then eventually departed. And Chris and I went to high school together. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to have an individual who's actually successfully exited a mid-market company on your team to provide wisdom and advice to exiting owners. So those would be the 3 key players. In addition to those, we have a terrific support team that helps work with our clients, guide them, etc. Primarily, we are networked tremendously with bankers, accountants, and attorneys. And really, we exist to serve the small to mid-sized business community and helping them get their hands around what will really be the largest financial transaction of their life. And that would be the exit of their business.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the process. Like, we contact you. What's the first thing that we do?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So we've developed a 5-step process, and I'll outline the 5 steps here at a high level, and then I'll dive a little deeper into each step. But the 5 steps are to identify one's objectives, evaluate essentially the present state of affairs, if you will, design a plan, and then implement that plan. And then the last stage, which is really kind of the secret sauce in our office, is to monitor that plan, right? I mean, sometimes exit plans and exit planners can be characterized a bit in the similar camp as strategic planning, where a company might hire a consultant to author, create, along with business leadership, a strategic plan, and then they set it on the shelf. And they really need to be coached and held accountable. And this is the monitor process, the monitor part of our process, rather. So as we circle back and we dive deeper into those 5 steps, identifying your objectives becomes really the key. So at an initial meeting, that if you were to call, if we were to sit down and talk, or if I was to speak with anyone who's listening, the first step would be to determine your exit timeline, right? When are you looking to transition out of your business? What does that transition look like? Define transition, right? Is it a full stop, like a full hard stop? I sell it and hand you the keys, Wendy? Or is it I kind of have a glide path out of my business? And for many of our clients, that timeline might be undetermined, but they have a different need, kind of planning for the continuity of their business should something tragic happen to them or any of their key employees. Once we develop a business exit timeline, we then do the critical next step, which is to really understand and determine what the value of their business is today. And this is key. And in our previous couple of shows, we talked about how few business owners actually know what the value of their business is, right? And the statistics are something like 98% of all small business owners have no idea what their business is worth, which is critically important when you're trying to determine how do I transition and how much income can I generate from this business. So those would be the 2 key items. When do I want to leave, and what's my business worth?
So, Mark, when is a good time to start this exploration? Is there a timeline of when you should start questioning this? The 10 years before you're thinking of getting at it, 5 years before you're thinking of getting out of it?
Well, I think the answer would be at least 3 years, right? Best probably 5. But Bo Burlingham outlines in his book that if you go through an exit planning process, and he's shared with me that he thought ours was kind of the best he had seen. The worst thing that can happen is you'll have a better business, right? So it's always critical to kind of begin with the end in mind. But I would say anywhere from at least 3 years and probably at best 5 years, because you're really not only trying to determine what your business is worth, but identify elements or qualities within your business that are holding you back, if you will. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing we talk about is evaluating.
Yeah, but before we do that, a couple more, items in the identification stage is, right? So we now know when I want to leave, what my business is worth. Next question would be, how much do you need to retire, Wendy? So if you say, hey, I need 150,000 a year or 200,000 a year, whatever your number is, I need to determine how much money do I need to retire? What sources of income do I have? So including Social Security, maybe you have a military pension. And then the rest is going to be coming out of savings and investment. But for most small business owners in America and around the world, the vast majority of their retirement will be funded by some type of transition out of their business. At least that's what they hope, right? So therefore you go back and say, well, then I have to know what my business is worth, right? Just kind of kills me as I travel around the Midwest. You ask business owners how much their business is worth, and they say, I have no idea, right? I think it's worth this, or I've been told I could get 6 times EBITDA or 10 times EBITDA, and they have no clue. But when I ask them, how's your 401k performing? Hey, I'm down, $100,000. So they'll know what's in their retirement plan, but they have no idea what's in the largest asset that they own.
So how do you go about finding that, Mark? I'm sorry to interrupt, but is there like a simple formula solution or somewhere you go to figure that out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, there are traditional valuation methodologies, right? It's usually a multiple of earnings, and there are, 4 different ways to value a business: asset, book, enterprise, etc. But most business owners, the reason why most business owners don't know what their business is worth is because it has always historically been very expensive to find out, anywhere between $8,000 to $20,000 for a valuation. And it's always been kind of a lot of work, at least it's been thought to be. Recently, in the last 7 or 8 years, there have been some cloud-based solutions. I think the ones that come top to mind, my good friend Michael Carter in Philadelphia formed a company called BizEquity. And they're the largest online business valuation firm in the world. Chuck Richards has got a company called Core Value. There's another one called Capitalize out of Australia. And these are all cloud-based, and they're all driven off of algorithms and benchmarking data, et cetera. So it's become much more affordable to understand what the value of their business, one's business is, and really almost no excuse now to not to find out. Right. So those resources are out there.
Okay.
Where we go as far as the next step would be to evaluate one's objectives. Right. So, we've identified when I want to leave, what my business is worth, and how much I need to retire. Right. That's kind of the starting point. That's kickoff, if you will, for if we were talking football earlier before the show. The next item or step in the process would be to evaluate really what your preferred succession path would be, right? Am I going to transition my business to insiders, people in the building? And that could be family members. It could be key employees. It could be all your employees through an employee stock ownership plan. Or am I apt to look at maybe selling my business to a third party? And for many of our owners, that becomes, many of our clients, that becomes their preferred path, because maybe they don't have key people that are capable of running their business, or they don't have family members in their business. Last but not least, another item that we explore is becoming what we call the investor owner, which is essentially, when we determine that a business owner business is maybe unexitable, and we can circle back on that later. And we'll ask them, well, why would you sell your business your best asset, right? Your best performing asset? Why not invest in it? Going back to that 3 to 5 year starting point, let's get a jump on the game. Let's maybe bring some professional management in, and you elevate yourself to that CEO or chairperson role. And from there, you're just going to live off the income of your largest asset, that being your business. So that would be the first thing that we evaluate. What is your preferred path? From there, we're going to identify the gap between what do I need to make and what is my business and other assets capable of producing from an income perspective. Once we determine what that gap is, we're then going to kind of lay out the items that can produce income. Again, Social Security, perhaps you have a pension, savings and investment, maybe some real estate. You own a business. How much is that business worth? How much income can it generate? And determine, how the stars align there. What spigot we're going to turn on first. And then I think most critical step is to really evaluate or analyze the health of your business, right? So is your business capable of being transitioned? And for our listeners out there, this is a critical area, right? So many businesses that we've found are just non-transferable. And we talked about this in our previous show where, the owners they cast such a big shadow when they walk into the room, and they are the business, right? Or they have high customer concentration. So again, your opening question, when should we start? Well, the sooner the better, because we have to understand, do we have any elements that might derail us from a successful exit? And how healthy is my business from an operational perspective, from a financial perspective, and from a leadership perspective?
Okay, so now we're going to get into designing.
Correct. So we know what our objectives are. We know our present state, if you will. We've evaluated our present state. So now we're going to make the soup, right? We're going to design, our plan, and we're going to build a customized roadmap that outlines your objectives and provides the strategies and tactics to help you meet those objectives, right? We're going to examine various what if scenarios. So what if key employees were to depart? What if there was a death of a key employee? What if we had a loss of a key customer, somewhere along the way? How can we de-risk our business? We focus with our clients both on a primary, so option A, and a secondary option B plan, right? Because we also know that, and our experience tells us that sometimes option A doesn't come to pass, and option A maybe falls apart. So we have to have the ability to pivot into a secondary plan. The key is that we do all of the above in collaboration with their existing advisor team, right? So we're kind of quarterbacking. We are quarterbacking their advisor team, their accountant, their attorney, maybe their financial advisor, any other maybe business coaches. We're bringing in interim CFOs or fractional CFOs, et cetera. We may be leaning out of business. Everything that we can do to, meet their objectives of increasing value, increasing the odds of a successful outcome, and essentially de-risking everything that's in the room.
And what I like about that is it looks like you're looking to identify roadblocks, things that can go wrong, and making sure there is a backup
one
plan.
thing we know is things will change, right? I mean, heading into it, we had a case, we had multiple cases as we started this process, and all of a sudden the global pandemic hits. Well, the pause button was, hit on exit planning, and the balance of those 2.5, 3 years was survival, right? So we had to work with our partner with our client to make sure that everything was still with the end in mind. It might have kicked that exit down a few years, if you will, but we're constantly, reshuffling the deck to make sure that we're strong enough, the business is strong enough, and the objectives still remain the primary focus throughout the process.
So the next step then is to implement.
Correct. So we understand, we've identified where we want to go. We've evaluated our present steps, or our present state of affairs, if you will. We've designed our plan, and now we implement it. So during the implementation process, this is where the execution would go. right? And this aligns with Bo Burlingham's book, by the way. So we're coordinating the efforts of your advisor team to either structure new documents, structure new financing, improve the business performance. We're de-risking the business as much as possible. We're focusing our attention on building value within the business to make it more valuable. And we're considering various funding solutions. So, for example, if we need to increase retirement savings outside the business, we're starting to examine how can we extract value today, maybe send it forward in a tax-efficient manner. And we implement these solutions and arrange these steps all in concert, again, with your existing advisors. And this is key.
So when it comes to the last step, monitor, this is where you had mentioned earlier, it's a lot of coaching involved. Correct.
So what I started in this journey in this space, the one element that really kept me awake and I was dissatisfied with is we would run through this at what was at that time a 4-step process: identify, evaluate, design, and implement. But our clients kept saying, well, hang on a second, Mark, you can't just leave us literally hanging here. I need some assistance. I need to be held accountable, because what happens when you run a business is you get sucked into the undertow day in and day out. So anyone who's listening today, as soon as you turn off this podcast, you're going to maybe pick up the phone and boom, your attention is drawn to something else. It's like the tyranny of the urgent, as I've been told before, and as I've experienced myself many, many times. So we needed a platform to provide accountability to one's objectives. So what we decided to do was to have our clients engage members of our team. So for example, Chris Goebel, as I mentioned earlier, who serves as a coach for individual business. So let's say, Wendy, you were a client of ours. We design a plan, and instead of just handing that plan off to you, we say, now we're going to meet every 30 days for an hour and a half. And that discussion is going to simply be, here's what we committed to doing last time relative to your exit plan. Here, what have you accomplished, right? And what are the open items list? And constantly moving things up in terms of priority. In addition to that, we set up a number of peer-to-peer advisory boards. So we actually purchased a franchise with the Alternative Board out of Denver, also known as TAB, the Alternative Board, TA. And we would bring our business owners together in a room once a month for 4 hours, and they would share, hey, here's my exit planning objective. Here's my potential, my scheduled departure date. Here's everything we're working on. And they would share issues, challenges, and opportunities with other exiting business owners. And that's where we saw the magic happen. And in fact, Bo Burlingham said, that's the secret sauce right there. So
it's a way to observe what can go wrong and what could go right.
Correct. And a lot of times when you receive coaching, and certainly in a peer-to-peer environment from other business owners, it's not so much what they might tell you to do, but what they'll steer you away from not doing, right? And they'll say, hey, I tried this, or here's the some of the success I had, or call this individual, they could really help you with that challenge. And as we're going through this monitoring process, it's always going back and reminding you, the client, hey, Wendy, here's your objective. Remember, this is what we said our goal was, and this is our date. So you can't just continue to kick this can down the road. We really need to, it's our job to hold you accountable to your goals and objectives. And that's, as I said, that's where the magic, that's really where the light went on it. And our practice really took off from there.
So when a plan is not working out as hoped, as should, what do we do at that point?
I mean, I think you'd have to examine, first of all, examine why, right? Do you have unrealistic objectives? And we've certainly seen that over the years, right? Where an individual says, hey, I need to make X number of dollars, but there's no way their business or their savings can produce that kind of income. So we have to really, come to have a real come to Jesus discussion with them about you're spending more money than you possibly can generate from the sale of your business. And in that case, sometimes the answer is, as I said, you can't sell this business because you will never retire comfortably. If it is a matter of their business not being valuable enough. Well, let's assess where it is today and what are the elements that we can focus on or the levers we can utilize to increase the value of that business. And that's all part of the exit planning process.
Okay. As we come up on time, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I think that the one thing that I would share with our audience, you say, well, this alignment that this show has with Bo Burlingham and the terrific book Finish Big, it really, one of the highest compliments I've ever received professionally is from Bo Burlingham, who said that that this process that I just laid out before you, this 5-step process: identify, evaluate, design, implement, and monitor, is what Bo said, the best model he has seen for providing business owners with the advice and support they need to develop a sound transition plan and maximize the chances of that business owner winding up happy, at peace, and financially secure at the end of the process. And I don't think we could ever receive higher praise from anyone in this industry, specifically a gentleman who's interviewed tens of thousands of business owners throughout his career.
And with that, do we want to spill the beans that we may be having an appearance of someone soon on the podcast?
Yeah, very, very excited, Wendy. Thank you for teeing that up. We have got Bo Burlingham coming up in episode 4. And I think what we're going to do is maybe break it down into two-part series, but just really understand his background and his passion for business and entrepreneurship, and certainly the exit planning process itself.
Well, I'm looking forward to that for sure. So tell me, Mark, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, we are always at the ready at 330-350-5410, or you can reach us at www.legacybusinessadvisors.com.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast. Until next time, I'm Wendy McConnell.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed listening to Finish Big, the podcast with Mark Dorman from Legacy Business Advisors. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes are available. Learn more at legacybusinessadvisors.com or call 330-350-5410. Please be aware the information in these podcasts represent the views and opinions of our guests and do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Legacy Business Advisors. The content is for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional tax or legal advice. Always seek the advice of your legal or tax professional with any questions regarding your specific situation.